In today's video, I am going to be breaking down why the 5-out basketball offense is essentially the king of basketball offenses right now. As we all know, the NBA is using a lot of screen and rolls, and that's because they're running a lot of 5-out offenses. So today, we're going to get down and check out this amazing basketball offense. So first, why is the 5-out offense king? Well, there's 5 reasons. The first reason is we are spreading the court out. Essentially, any defense that's currently playing in the key or trying to defend the net is being spread out. This gives us more attacking points. So for example, if the other team was running a man-to-man defense, what you would see is essentially man on up top. We're seeing the defender being 1 big step away for being 1 pass away, and then 2 big steps away for being 2 passes away. Now, why is this important? Well, as we can see, there is not much when it comes to defending the key. So just right off the bat, if player 1 was a very fast player and he could get past his initial defender, there really isn't that much in front of him now to be able to score. He's going to be pretty much uncontested unless one of these 2 players or both of these 2 players then go and collapse and play help defense, in which case player 1 can kick that ball out for 3-point shots. This is essentially collapsing the defense. This happens also with a zone defense. So for example, in a 2-3 zone defense, what we would see is there being gaps between the zones. Now this is just a rough draw of what a zone is, but essentially any of these gaps, what we see, there's going to be a double team. Whether it's a double team between 2 and 4, 1 and 2, or 3 and 1. So by essentially collapsing the defense, all you really need to do is essentially just attack the gaps. Seems really simple because when you attack the gap, that collapses players 2 and 1, and at this point, players 4 in theory are open, or players 2, depending on how you're attacking that gap. If there was a closure of a gap up top that would lift the defense up higher, let's say player 1 started to attack player 1 and 2's gap. Well, guess what? We now have 2 players essentially open, and we could even run very simply a player 3 and 2 cut so that when player 1 passes player 2 the ball, that'll collapse player 4 over, and one of 2 things will happen. We could have player 3 possibly being open for a layup or a hammer pass out to player 5 for the 3-point shot. Now this is just all hypotheticals without even having to run an offense. See, the great thing with that 5-out offense is we can be a little bit more free-forming when it comes to playing against the defense because you don't necessarily have to run a play with a 5-out. You just have to have players who want to have movement, and at that point, if you've got somebody attacking the gap, then at that point, you can make extra passes, have players cut, things like that, and at that point, they can find an open spot and get an easy basket potentially. So that's the benefit of a 5-out, number 1 anyways. Another reason is because the 5-out offense can actually be started in every single offense, and we can actually, instead of in this one, we would have our post players playing down lower, and what we could do is set pin down screens for players 4 and 5 from 3 and 2, and at that point, these 2 players can go towards that high post. Players 3 and 2 pop back out, and now we're in a horns offense. So if we really wanted to set up some mismatches early, we could set that up and hope that there's some switches, and then we could do a quick, simple horns offense out of that, attack that side, player 4 rolls, player 5 pops, and at that point, player 1, depending on the defense, could pass to 3, could attack the basket, could pass to player 4, or pass out to player 5. So essentially the second reason is going to be mainly it's able to set up other offenses out of that 5-out so you can get some early mismatches on possibly switched defenses. Or you can even set up a 5-out, and if you've got one dedicated zone offense, for example an overload, you could easily just set up the 5-out, run a quick screenplay so that we can get everybody into an overload, and we can run one set through an overload, and at that point you could even have some possible openings before even having to run that zone offense. The other reason is simplicity. You don't need to be a rocket science or scientist when it comes to the 5-out offense. It's very simple. You can have simple screen and roll plays with 2 players on your team. That player would roll towards the basket. We could also have a pin down screen at the same time for player 2. And now we have multiple players who are open, who are either rolling towards the basket for a layup, if there's a help defender, a kick out for a 3, or we could pass over to player 2. There's so many different options out of this. Really quickly, make sure to go check out my complete guide to the 5-out basketball offense down in the description below. The fourth reason is because it teaches our players how to play the game, and also it teaches our players how to space the floor. There's nothing worse than if you've got a team of really young players who just kind of clump together in a ball that say, pass me the ball, pass me the ball. And when in reality, they have no area to even pass to because there's defenders in that mix, and it just gets disgusting because they can't go anywhere. Kid can't go anywhere because he would be traveling. If he went to maybe take a few steps or dribble again, it could be double dribble. So at that point, it teaches our players, hey, we can't always be all together. We need to be spread out. And then we can teach our teammates or our players how to set up simple screen away plays so that they're learning, hey, if I'm the bottom man on this, I could roll towards the basket because I'm possibly open for a layup. And then player 5, he could roll towards or flash towards the high post, and that gives player 1 multiple different options. And at the very beginning, we can teach our players how to simply just pass that ball, cut to the rim, and fill those spots that are now open. We can teach our players this, and it's super simple to be able to spread the court and have them not gathered together in a single ball. The fifth bonus is because if you have a team that is not very tall, let's say you had a grade 12 team and your tallest player, who's your center, may only be 6'4". You would not want to be generally running let's say a 4-out or even possibly a triangle or an overload or a strong overload for a team that's not even tall, because then this player would be pretty much useless down there, and possibly player 4 as well. And because of that, the only useful players would be out in the perimeter, and they would essentially guard that and potentially run something like a perimeter basketball defense, similar to the book that I wrote also down in the description. And as we all know, the NBA is really starting to gear towards three-point shooting. They're really starting to gear over towards having shorter potential teams with obviously longer arms, Toronto Raptors being one of them. But at that point, you're going to be wanting to run a 5-out because if you've got a low post player who is not as tall or able to defend or even play against a 7-footer or somebody who is a lot bigger than them, then the 5-out offense becomes really attractive because it opens up basically open gaps for pretty much any size of player to get a layup and pretty much anyone to hit a 3. I hope that you've enjoyed today's video. If you have, hit that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you guys again next time.